Welcome to this episode of the Deeper Than Dough podcast. I'm Bennett, your host, with my co-host Wade. And today we are interviewing Hawkins, Brian Hawkins from the Tiny House Movement. He is a father to four, super cool guy, and he's got a super big following on Instagram, 600,000+ followers. So he's a marketing genius. Stay tuned to this episode to find out how Brian has incorporated an amazing work-life balance by staying focused on his mental health. Brian, welcome to the show. We're glad that you're here.
Dude, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Bennett. Wade,
Yeah.
good to see you guys.
Absolutely. You want to give a little introduction of yourself?
Yeah, my name is Brian Hawkins, father of four. I've been building tiny homes for a little over a decade and got my start in social media, just having to get the word out about building these random custom little tiny homes that we were sending all over the country. And social media was the easiest, most effective way to pinpoint who I wanted to try to sell homes to, and the easiest way from an analytical standpoint of being able to keep track of who that was so I can continue to grow that audience. And just grew from a social media presence there to helping other people do the same thing, and then helping influencers align with brands that made sense for them and vice versa. And then now I just do all kinds of random crazy stuff.
And what got you into tiny homes? I heard something before we started recording about my boy Elon Musk.
Yeah. He is not who got me into tiny homes. My brother-in-law was a general contractor and had been building one for just a friend of his that had a couple thousand acres in Montana that he just hunted on a couple times a year, wanted a place to bug out to, and was doing it by himself. So I went down there to help him a couple of times, really piqued my interest, and started doing research to find out what the heck these things were, who was building them, who wanted them, how much we could sell them for, and found this list. I went and, before we even had a business, I went and got a list of 8 people that were willing to pay me cash for a tiny home if I could build it for them from all over the country, all outside of Utah. Mm-hmm. And then I convinced my brother-in-law to quit his job, and we started a tiny house business, and that was it.
So where did Elon Musk come in again?
Elon Musk came in with Boxable, which is a company out of Vegas that is mass producing. The idea is there are tiny house builders all over the country, and they're all great, but they all build custom homes, and they're anywhere from 1 to maybe 5 a month, which 5 homes a month is a lot. But what Boxable is doing is talking about automating that process, kind of like a car dealer would, of going from building a custom car a month to thousands of homes or thousands of cars every single month. Mm-hmm. So Boxable is just down on the north end of Vegas. And I was trying to get one of the first ones he had a few years ago, but he wouldn't give it to me. So he sold it to Elon Musk instead. And that was
But it was like Elon and
I'm sure it was just like,
right?
Dude,
right
Elon's next on that list. And I'm right. I'm way more important on this list to make him successful. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good almost, man.
Yes.
Well, cool. When you're younger, what did you want to be?
Oh gosh. I thought for sure I was going to be a basketball player. Dude, I was 5'9" when I graduated high school.
Okay, I was about to ask, how tall are you now?
I'm 6'4" now. Okay. I grew 3 inches on my mission, and I was as late of a bloomer as you could possibly get. But for some reason, still thought I was going to be a basketball player. And athleticism was never my curse. That never happened to me. So that was a very quickly unrealized dream.
Awesome. Yeah, so we were the same height as seniors. I didn't grow it. I know I'm a 5'8". Even then, I kind of lied about it.
You can say you're 5'9".
I'm probably like 5'7" +3".
Sure.
You could round up, but I can't round up and then round another inch.
Hey, if you got basketball shoes on, you're easily a couple inches taller.
So, anyways, let's jump in. So Deeper Than Dough, what we want to focus on is what's driving us. What's the real why? And I know we were talking about that a little bit with the family. Well, no, I'll just let you answer that.
My why is a very stereotypical one of your family, kind of what drives you on a daily basis. I have 4 kids. They're 18 down to 8. And when we had our first child, Braxton right now is a senior right here in Lehigh, has Asperger's. And when we get into kind of the why of what's important in your stereotypical family answer, for me, it was seeing my oldest son and understanding and not fully being able to comprehend as a new dad. You think you know what marriage is until you're in it. You think you know what having kids is until you have them. Same is true for business, right? Like starting your first business, you think you know the hiccups that are going to come. So for me, having a son that has Asperger's, I thought I knew what that meant. Like I thought I knew the definition of what that was, or what his mental health would be like, and what mine would be like, what my wife's would be like, the struggles that would come with that. And we decided at a very early age for him that we just weren't going to have this we were never going to let him use this as any type of crutch or excuse. in his life, for anything that he wanted to be, any aspirations that he had that he would be able to do. So we have always been encouraging him. And for me, that why continues to be for all of my kids, putting them in the best position to do what they want to do with their lives.
Was that hard? Like, you were a big sports guy then, right?
Uh-huh.
Was that hard having to navigate that with your son? Like, okay, well, if it's not sports, like,
Oh my gosh, man.
I'm with you on that. Like, that's I was always in sports.
It probably took until he was 10 for me to finally kind of disengage and not make him play something. Team sports were just never of interest. Like, I always played basketball, football, baseball, soccer. I got into golf a little bit later in life. And I tried going down that road with him, and he couldn't care less. Like, he had fun.
Yeah.
And never knew.
But he wasn't passionate about it.
No, not in the slightest bit, man. I would imagine I probably ticked off a lot of other kids and a lot of other parents by having him there and making him be there and standing on the sideline, just staring at him, forcing him to play. But he never had that interest.
No, I can imagine that's hard because, I mean, I've been going through that. Like, a lot of my identity was attached to sports, football, wrestling, rugby. I was always busy with something. Then I got more into business and I just got really fat. Got to 310 pounds, and it's kind of like I can't identify as that person anymore. You know, like who I thought I was, where like I'm the sports guy. You know, wrestling at 160 wasn't there, so I kind of had to coach myself. Imagine that's a lot harder.
Well, you look awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
That's a
losing some
freaking
weight.
ton of weight loss, man.
Yeah, I got a surgery, so it helped a little bit.
Either way, dude.
Yeah.
But it's going.
What are you down to now?
I'm at 235. I started at 310, so 75 pounds.
That's why I'm 235, man.
Did yoga this morning, and I can actually like bend. I can like sit cross-legged, kind of.
Hey, dude, we all have our things that we excel at.
Well, so anyways, I was asking about your son, because I've always thought of that as well. Like, what if my son isn't like me, you know?
Yeah.
And I deal with that as a manager in like summer sales. Like, I think that they should think like me. And it's so hard to know like what I like, what happiness is to me, what fulfillment is to me, isn't the same to these guys. Like, you know, I want to go be seen and like be the number one producer or whatever. And other people are just fine, just kicking it. And it's like, that was so hard for me to grasp and to allow other people to like live what they want to live for so long. And I know I'm struggling with that with my kids already.
Like kids in general, I mean, as they get older, right? Like I get advice from people that are empty nesters that have put their kids through college, that are married now and have their own kids, those kind of things. Because where I am now, I still have kids, you know, from second grade to a senior in high school. And I'm kind of reliving those same stages a couple of different times. And it's wild to me how they all grow up in the exact same house, have the same mom and dad, same rules. I mean, just kind of the same belief system, everything else, right? And they all are so flippin' unique and different. And I go from my oldest son, who couldn't care less about sports, to my second son, who is 15, that is the most ultra competitive little freaking punk that I know and thinks he's God's gift to everything. Like, just that dude's going to is everybody's
so you probably
everything.
Relate to him, right?
Oh my gosh, no. He reminds me so much of my brother sometimes. It's hilarious because it is, my brother is 2 years older than me and was the exact same way, just super competitive, really good at sports. And I always was just kind of the little brother tagging along to stuff. And it's really hard because I get some of the same memories and like angst or anger I had as a kid toward my brother, toward my own son, just because he acts the same way that my brother did. So that's my battle with my why on a daily basis.
Honestly, I'm asking these questions because I'm like, I'm super interested in this. You know, my kids are 3 or 5, 3 and 1. So I'm like, how do I allow them to find their joy and their fulfillment and their happiness?
Gosh, man. I mean, obviously I can only speak for myself, right? Like, I am not by any means a guru or a child expert or a psychologist. I have done everything I can as someone who is fulfilled by seeing joy in others. It took a long time for me to have that perspective with my own kids, which you think would be the opposite. Like, you think your kids, your wife, the people that you are with, your family are the ones that you always want to be the happiest. But for me personally, I got so caught up in trying to understand how to provide a living and be successful from a financial standpoint for them, that it took me a while to figure out that they couldn't care less about that. They don't care how much money I make when I get home.
But you're doing it for them, right?
Yeah, obviously I'm doing it for them.
Well, no, I'm just, I did the same thing. No, babe, I'm not going to take you on a date tonight, whatever. I'm working late, but I'm doing it for you, you know? And it took a while to see that it wasn't definitely, it wasn't for her. It was for me.
It definitely took longer than it should have.
Well, that's my question, because I'm staring down the barrel right now at my first child coming.
I didn't know if we were allowed to announce that.
Yeah.
Hey, congrats, man.
Yeah, we're just now starting. We just passed the 12
Sweet.
weeks, which is typically when people start announcing it, because you're kind of out of the, it's more of a
Sure.
solid. But we found out it's a boy, so we're gonna have a boy.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Whoever's listening to the
Carry on the
podcast,
name.
you're amongst the first group to find out, which is exciting. But I mean, I feel like I could spend 24 hours a day, every single day, working on Dirty Dough. There's always more projects to work on. There's always more things to do. Where did you find the balance? Because you were one of the first, tiny homes manufacturers, producers in the country.
Yeah.
It sounds like. I mean, there must have been a million things you could have done at any one given time. Where'd you find the balance?
The short answer is I have an amazing wife. Like, I wish I could tell you that I had some brilliant breakthrough of what I was able to figure out. The reality is I would spend 14 hours a day in the shop trying to build a home, a tiny home. I would come home, help put kids to bed, and then I'd spend another 4 hours trying to figure out social media and getting the word out from a marketing standpoint. Like my wife, we were on the same page, and she had to put up with a lot from that side. And I was lucky enough that through all the hard times, above all else, to find someone that has your back no matter what. And it helps when you can kind of explain why you're doing it, I'm sure, as opposed to just not showing up randomly at times.
Mm-hmm.
But having someone that is there with you and for you, especially when there are children involved, is really the biggest difference and the biggest reason why I've been able to do what I've done in my career.
Yeah. See, I felt very similar. I have an amazing wife that's extremely patient and really is fully on board with the plan and what we're trying to do here. But I find myself having to find these little necessary moments of having fun and spending time together. And I mean, how did you find that? What would you do typically? Did you have kind of a standard, hey, we're going to do something on the weekend or no work on this day?
Yeah. So I would have a couple things that I thought were brilliant ideas in the beginning of having kids come down to the shop and learning certain tricks of the trade, and participating in not really what was a family run business, but just getting to understand what it's like to install flooring, painting, even welding, like just anything and everything that we could kind of do to teach. And my 18-year-old now is in a welding program.
Cool, that's
and
awesome.
his interest started from that, which is it's crazy to me. But we would try to do things on the weekend where I could completely unplug. But the problem is when you're wearing, 4 or 5, 15 hats, whatever that is in a startup, I'm running sales, I'm running marketing, I'm running customer service. I'm also spending time in the shop building the homes themselves. Like there's no such thing as the weekend.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Where like you don't get Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So it's finding every minute you can to be with them and express your interest in them and their interests more than anything else. That was the hardest thing. Going back to kind of your firstborn not being into what you're into, it took me a long time to figure out what he really was interested in. And now I've taken a more conscious effort with my other kids to help understand what keeps their interests, letting them kind of go over those things and then showing an interest in those with them as well.
Yeah. With the, well, wait, I guess I want to answer your questions.
Yeah.
Having it structured, like and like being public about it as well. Like this is what I'm committing to. Like we do on my calendar every night, dinner 6:00. Like we're doing dinner. It's very rare that I'll work after 5. And then I try never to schedule anything on the weekends either. And then date night as well every Friday night. But if it's on the calendar, just kind of, because I can easily trick myself. I want to get your guys' opinion on this though. Like, I like working.
Yeah.
Like, do I want to go play pickleball? Sure. But do I want to freaking close another deal? Like, I'm getting more dopamine from closing a deal,
Yeah.
But then it comes back to what you just said is like, well, what's fun for them? It's not just, like I do find a lot of joy and fulfillment in working every day and working even long hours. But how am I in my kids' life? How am I helping other people, whether it's my kids or my wife or just the general public? Like, how am I helping other people to also find joy and fulfillment, not just myself? And that's always, it's an easy justification. Hey, I'm working because I like to work.
Well, for me too, sometimes I struggle to find the balance of jumping in and out of work mode and regular mode with family. And I mean, I won't lie. There's sometimes that closing deals and getting stuff done on the work side, I feel like I get just as much or more of a rush from that until I've turned that mode off, switched into family mode, and then I just don't even want to think about work. So, I mean, B-Hawks, did you find yourself kind of, I mean, I don't know, this is kind of a hard question to answer, but were you getting I mean, what was the difference between the joy fulfillment you were getting on the work side versus the family side? Were you able to jump back and forth pretty easily, or
Question, man.
was it hard to flip the switch?
It was the fulfillment for me has always been leaning more heavy toward the family side than it is on the work side. I got to the point when I transitioned out of hammer to nail, building homes all day, every day, and focusing more on the social media side, it became much easier, and certain aspects were a lot harder because it's so convenient to have your phone and to be on social media when that's a part of your job, to convince yourself that you're working, right? Or that you're doing something that's of substance or value to someone somewhere, right? Like,
We're probably anybody. I mean, I'm so guilty of that right now.
It's way too easy because like worst case, it's a part of marketing. It's a part of, this is what I'm doing to grow the business. Like I gotta DM these people or talk to this guy or whatever, right? So I got to the point that I won't spend more than 2 hours on social, even though that's literally my bread and butter. Where I get paid is typically through social media. I can't spend more than 2 hours on work because for me and my own mental health, I can't sit there and scroll endlessly. I don't care what the platform is. Instagram has been kind of my go-to, but I can't sit there and just scroll through Instagram all day, every day, because I wind up doing nothing. You're literally just wasting time liking other people's stuff or commenting on other people's stuff. And at first I did that because that's how I grew from an algorithmic standpoint, is I would go hit people up and collaborate with them. And then you get into the commenting on other people's, having other people see that, commenting on yours, and starting to grow that way, right? That was kind of how I got started. And then got to the point that you get to a certain following, you're like, all right, now what? Like, congrats on having a certain following, but what does that get you, right? Like, unless you're using that in some other way to monetize, what's the end game with that? Social media is fantastic, but it could be an enormous black hole or just really deep rabbit hole if you let it get to you.
So just a follow-up question to that, the different type of, I don't know if you could call it like a happiness feeling that you get from recognition from others, people saying, hey man, you're killing it. You're doing amazing things on the business side. Your social media is killing it, versus time with your family, happiness with your family. Do those feel separate? Can you separate those in your mind, or is it pretty similar?
No, for me, it's really easy to separate the two. I can literally be alone with my thoughts in the middle of nowhere and be satisfied. Like I don't need random people's that I will never meet is acceptance, right? For my social media following in particular, almost half of it is outside of the United States. It's all over the planet. So it's not like these are people I run into. I have never once in my life been stopped somewhere and been like, oh, you're the tiny house guy, right? Like that doesn't happen. So I'm not too worried about being best friends with random people that I'm never going to meet online. So for me, it's really easy to just kind of have my group of people and be friends with them and stay connected with them without needing to feel like I'm making more friends online.
I think one's a lot more authentic.
Yeah.
I mean, the joy and fulfillment that I get from just hanging out with people versus like that public recognition. Well, that public recognition brings freaking stress, because it's like, well, if I'm getting this these good feelings from an outside force, well, I can't always control that outside force, and that's kind of scary. You know, like what if we stop having that? So I'm wanting to go where you're at right now. Like I could be alone with my thoughts. I'm like, no, I'm gonna put a podcast on because I got to be learning. I abandoned music for like a good 5 years because it wasn't efficient, right? Like I wasn't getting at, and then I'm like, that's so stupid. I could just enjoy it. You know? That's part of life, is I need to enjoy it. But I'm like, well, no, I'm just gonna abandon that and read a bajillion books and get better at sales. And yeah, it worked. But then I'm like, it's hard to just drive with silence, you know? Like actually I remembered it this morning because I go to yoga because that forces me to do that. So I go to yoga, I get out of my car, I'm listening to music in my car, pull up my headphones because I need headphones to go from my freaking car to the yoga, you know what I mean? And then I thought about it.
Seconds. Yeah.
And then I put it back down. I'm like, no, I don't need headphones right now. And then I did my yoga, and man, yoga's cool. Mentally.
I've heard great things.
Because you're like, I don't know, you're focusing on your breath, and it's hard to it's easy still to get distracted, but focusing on like, I'm there to be present in the moment and not think about work. It's been pretty helpful.
I bet, man.
Well, what practices do you do? Like yoga is one of the things that I do. What's something that you do to stay sharp mentally, you know, focusing on your mental health, making sure that you are in the correct mindset?
My two biggest, where I can essentially disconnect, are hiking with my wife and then golfing are the two. For me, golf is something that I got into in high school just because my dad was golfing all the time. he and my brother were always out golfing, and I was that kid that would play 9 holes and then just hang out in the clubhouse, like drinking soda and waiting for them to finish the back 9 kind of a thing. I got into it because I found that even though it can be extremely stressful and one of the most expensive hobbies somebody can have, there's a sense of peace of just kind of being out there where you can't blame anybody else for anything that goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing that can happen is somebody is talking while you're swinging, but you can't blame somebody else for hitting the ball the wrong way, not getting the score that you want. Yeah, I mean,
miss block.
Yeah, in basketball, like I can blame somebody for a miss all the time, right? But in golf, if I mess up, it was always just on me. So for me, that was just a way to gain a better edge of what thoughts are going through my head at a very specific time. And then hiking is just a great way to just get out in nature, kind of just let everything go, not have to worry about anything else that's going on. Just a way for me to personally disconnect and be out there and enjoy some one-on-one time with my wife.
That's a goal of mine, is to be able to enjoy hiking. But I'm not joking. Like, I've actually been very public about that. That's a personal goal.
Like I thought walking was the dumbest thing I could, like, what am I?
It's
why am I just walking through the mountains?
Where am I going?
Yeah.
Where am I going? And I always focus on the destination, but not the journey.
Dude, you hear people say that?
Man, I want to freaking enjoy the journey.
That's the sales mentality, right? Like, you always have a destination.
Yep.
There's like, I know I'm going to get here. I'm going to achieve this goal. I'm going to get there the fastest, the quickest, the best, whatever that is. And it's really hard to let go from a competition standpoint, to just actually enjoy where you are right now, to be where your feet are, is really hard to do. But once you get there, you're way less stressed, way less stressed.
What are you doing to help, particularly your kids? I mean, because I want to know that personally. So you have golfing and hiking. What are you doing with your kids to kind of teach them, like, hey, you guys, happiness is important. Joy is important. Fulfillment's important. How are you helping them do that?
Number one is none of them have social media.
I was going to ask that. I wanted to see what your
So even my
stance was with
18-year-old
kids.
still doesn't have, and he doesn't care. Like, he's not
That's
really interested
cool.
in it anyway. So that's been the easiest by far. My 15-year-old will be 16 here in a couple of weeks. Just got his first Instagram account at this point. Has been begging for it for probably at least 5 years. Always just, all my friends have iPhones. All my friends are on social, everything else. I'm like, I don't care.
Did you get him a phone, but just not the social media?
So he had a Gab phone for a few years.
Okay.
Went down that road. I just gave him one of my old phones that has access to apps. And I have access still to see exactly what he's texting, calling people, what he's going through on social, all that fun stuff too. But my biggest is not letting him be there, just because as someone that supposedly has control as an adult, as a 40-year-old, you see so many easy pitfalls that people fall into 24/7, no matter how disciplined you think you are.
Yeah.
Why in the world would I put my kids through that?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I didn't have that problem.
Have you seen the new one called Be Real?
Oh yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Have you seen it, Wade?
I've seen it. Yeah.
I just downloaded it yesterday.
Yeah, it's definitely intriguing, man.
I didn't create an account yet, though.
Of being able to just brag about where you are, not even brag, but just where you are and what you're doing in that exact moment all the time.
Well, what is it? Can you kind of explain?
It's
what
literally
it is?
just taking a selfie of where you are. So it takes a picture of you, and then on the opposite side of the phone.
And it's also random as far as like when it asks.
Yeah,
you, right?
it hits you up, gives you a notification.
And then
of,
you
all right,
get
it's
like
time to be real.
Yeah, and then you have like a 2-minute time span, so you can't be like, oh, let me go look good.
Yeah, you can't. It
know?
can't be Instagram.
Isn't
Like,
it?
that's
And I
the
like
goal
that.
to it.
I
It's
think
the
that's
antithesis
cool.
of that.
Isn't it too that you can't see what other people have posted until you've posted yourself?
Yeah,
Yep.
something like that.
And
I
you
just saw
can't
there's
always
26
see
million monthly users, and I'm like, that's cool.
they're growing for sure.
I mean, going into the mental health, like such a big portion of the mental health crisis is the Instagram effect, right? I'm going to compare my normal imperfect life with your perfect life, where this Be Real thing, there's no filters either, I assume, or
No,
are there?
and you can or you can't share your location. So some people, you could share a picture of where you are, but you don't have to share your exact location of where you are. That was my biggest thing.
And then you're actually making at least more accurate comparisons, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm camping, that dude's at the park, right? But this dude's not like doctored up picture.
he's
of
just sitting in his living room watching TV like I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is very much
like the
a
concept.
be real in that moment. It's unique for sure. And it's something that's refreshing and needed, because as someone who has made a living on Instagram, it's not something that I want my kids deep into by any means.
That's really cool. Did you experience, like, so I've heard that let's not give the kids Instagram, I mean, or social media. That's definitely the best way to go. But then there's the pressure at school of like, all my friends have it, and anyways, the guy that was speaking about this was really like, this needs to be a collective effort. Like, Billy can't be the only one in school without an Instagram, right? I mean, obviously he can, and good for him, but to make it easier for other kids.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you get
Dude,
there? And how are you doing?
So I totally understand that. My personal issue is I couldn't care less how other parents raise their kids compared to how I raise mine.
Mm-hmm.
I do what I think is best for my kids, and if some of those are going to be really tough lessons, some of them are going to be really tough. But my 15-year-old is the very stereotypical. I'm with my friends. I want to show off what I'm doing. Anything that I do, I need to be able to show off to people how awesome it is, right? And I can't stand that, which is one of the other reasons that I couldn't care less if he was the only kid that's sitting in school that didn't have an iPhone or wasn't able to prove to his friends that he was somewhere awesome.
That's going to be so good for him later on.
Oh yeah.
That's so cool.
I can't stand that. That is my personal struggle with social, is that people think that they need to show.
I wanted you need to be my dad, man.
Oh my gosh.
I needed that. I grew up with just, oh man, I was craving that attention. Everything I did, I needed the attention. I needed to take the picture, and I hated posting on Instagram because I didn't want to come up with a freaking caption because there's too much pressure, dude. So I just barely posted, and I'm like, why the hell did I care so much? But that's how I grew up. I didn't have a freaking Brian telling me to put my phone away.
See, I grew
just
up
enjoy the moment.
I was the youngest in my family, and my dad grew up in the backwoods as a logger. Like, his dad was a professional boxer, and then once he was done boxing, became a logger. So he was driving 18-wheel trucks at 14.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just kind of your very stereotypical man's man out in the backwoods in Oregon and Washington and random small islands in Alaska. Like, there was no having to prove to people how awesome you were all the time. Like, you were who you were, and that was it. And that was the house I grew up in. And social media has changed that for so many people at such a young age. And I'm really interested to see the effect that it has on my kids, on that generation.
What do you think the effect will be?
I mean, the obvious right now is having to prove how good you are, how amazing you are, how awesome your life is. I mean, just what you said, right? Proving that your life is not
and it's that comparison,
what it really is.
Right? Like, I'm happy when I get that external recognition, right? Like, oh, you're cool, dude. Your company's cool. Like, I like that, but I want to not like that as much.
Dude, the weirdest thing in the world to me was when my kids would watch YouTube videos of other people playing video games.
Yeah.
Esports, man.
It's insane.
Like, I wouldn't even watch my friends playing video games growing up. Why in the world would I want to watch some random dude online that I've never met and will never meet, and how good he is at video games?
My wife's little brother one time told me that he was going over to his friend's house to watch with him to watch someone play video games. I was like, so you guys aren't even going to play the video games? You guys are going to get on YouTube and watch someone else play the video games?
I think it's silly, but I also think watching sports is a little silly. So I'm just going to throw that out there. That I don't think it's that much different.
But I think that is the effect. I mean, my kids definitely live in a completely different virtual world that didn't exist when I was their age.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the effect that will have long term. For example, I have a job in social media that didn't exist when I was in school. Like, with what I wanted to be as a basketball player, right? Like, I very quickly learned that was never going to happen. But when I got into going through school, getting into marketing or into sales, and then you get into social media, like, those things didn't even exist when you're trying to get a degree.
Yeah.
Let alone how to be good at them or how to succeed with them or how to make money with them. It'll be really interesting to see how quickly everything changes because technology continues to ramp up, and how quickly we can go from what we think is the standard on a day-to-day basis to, artificial intelligence or anything else that takes it to that next level like that. I think it'll be really interesting moving forward.
So do you think it'll be an overall net positive or a net negative?
I think that completely depends on how you see life, right? Like, if you're a farmer or if you just like to kind of be out in the woods, huge negative, because you think people don't have any idea how to talk to another human being unless it's through their phone, which would seem really odd, even as me as a kid, right? Like, going through school, to thinking, last thing I wanted to do was to be on the phone with somebody for half an hour. Like, it would be like, all right, where are you going to be? Sweet, I'll meet up with you there.
Mm-hmm.
And now you could be in the same room with someone on your phone.
Everybody's just chilling.
Right.
I see
like,
that all the time.
It completely depends on how you see life and what you are into as to whether that is a net positive or negative.
That's super cool what you're doing with your kids, man. That's like, for me, it gives me a lot more confidence. Like, I for sure need to do that with my kids. I mean, my daughter started watching YouTube at 4 years old, and within a few weeks, it was already like, Daddy, I want to go where she goes. Daddy, I want this. I'm just like, no. So you're great job on that, and way to set the example for us here.
Thank you. It's not easy by any means, and I'm not perfect at it, but it is. I feel like it's a worthwhile venture.
Have you thought about kind of the next step? Like, you're you're setting a great example for the kids, kind of for what, anybody else. Is there anything else that you're doing or that you've thought of doing to kind of instill that in maybe a larger audience and just helping people general find more joy, find more fulfillment, be more comfortable with who they are and not look for those external validation that comes through social media?
Yeah, for me personally, I try to use my social media for that. So I started traveling around. When I stopped building myself, I started traveling around to different tiny house locations and doing giveaways to help people. People became so fascinated with 300 and 400 square foot spaces, which trailers have been around forever, but having it on wheels and being built more like a typical residential home versus your normal manufactured home is really what separated the two. So I started traveling around with my wife and kids when they weren't in school to different locations to show them what life is like in different parts of the country, and taking them to other countries for that exact same reason of getting as much culture as possible and experience as possible. And then I got to realizing how ridiculously gifted just opportunities that I have been given. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. It's finding a way to give back, just because I'm a firm believer that where much is given, much is required. And I feel like I've been given everything, and finding ways to help my kids with their interests and how they can take that perspective of giving back the entire time versus it's all about the amount of money that I can make on this deal. And there's nothing wrong with making a certain amount of money, but finding ways to be able to give back while you're doing that, I think is what really separates the philanthropy side from just straight economics.
Yeah, that's where I get the fulfillment. Is how many people am I helping? Like, it's cool to be successful. It's cool to have money, but like when I die, and I'm going to end with this question for you. When I was going through like my mission statement, my core values, one of those core values was hard work. Like, so sorry. The activity was go ask a bunch of people, family, friends, whoever you're close with, what are your core values? And I did that and I got tons of feedback. And then I threw it in a spreadsheet. I'm like, going to analyze this. And the top one was hard work. Then the next activity was write your own obituary. Like, when you're dead, what do you want to be remembered for? And hard work didn't come up because like drug dealers, they probably work hard. There's a lot of shitty people that probably work really hard. And so I scrapped that one. And what do I want to be known for? I want to be known for making the world a better place, easing other people's suffering, bringing them more joy and more fulfillment. So I want to ask you that kind of the last question is, how do you want to be remembered? Like, what is the legacy that you wish to leave behind?
I want to be remembered as someone who is willing to lead by example, to always do what I say I'm going to do. Really the follow through. And if that is bringing joy to other people, for example, that I was actually able to fulfill that, because goals are fantastic and having them is always a good idea. But until you actually follow through with that, it's always on to the next one. Always. Doesn't matter what it is. And it doesn't matter what aspect of your life that's in, whether it's from physical, mental, or economical. There's always going to be another goal that you're trying to get to. So for me, it's fulfillment on the standards that I have set, that I was actually a man of my word and willing to follow through with what I said I was going to do.
I mean, mentally, if you don't do that, that beats you up because you're like, oh, I tried this and I told myself I was going to do it. I failed. And then I tried this and I told myself I was going to do it and I failed. And then I tried this. And then mentally, you're just telling yourself that, like you can't finish. Yeah. So I really like what you're like, I'm going to stick to it and I'm going to see it all the way through. That's cool.
Yeah, that's it for me, man. That's what makes sense for me.
That's awesome.
That's a wrap, man.
All right.
That's the first episode.
I like it.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Brian, for coming in. That was Brian Hawkins, everybody. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and follow our channel. There will be a lot more interesting podcasts on the way, a lot of really cool guests, and so make sure to follow.